brought to you by Tai Software. It is attracting shippers who pay and stay. It's all about freight brokerage growth, and we're going to have a fun hour here. My name's Kevin Hill with Brushpass Research, and I'm joined by Sean McGillicuddy, the Chief Revenue Officer over at Tai Software. How are you doing today, Sean?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you playing the MC today, even though we're hosting. It's really nice to have somebody else running things, asking the questions. You always do a good job with these, so I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you very much. It's a different job quarterbacking in the show than being a guest, certainly, and I enjoy it. And also Samantha Jones, the founder of Samantha Jones Consulting. Samantha, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, and I echo what Sean said. Really grateful to be the one not leading this podcast today. So.
I know I get all the hard work of managing everybody, questions and answers, and making sure that we get through all the points we won't talk about, because we have a lot of points here.
A lot of points, and you got to keep Sean and I on track because we.
Yeah, please.
I know, right? I know, you guys. That's the number one job here that we have. And freight brokerage growth, it's really on everybody's minds. We've been through a tough market. We continue to grind through that market. And it has been really rough on freight brokerages. And I keep track of the net new counts each and every month. We started in November of 2022 with about 31,000 brokerages with active MC authorities, and we have seen just a tremendous slide off from that. We're sitting at just under 25,000 now. We have a graph here from the August numbers, and at that point we'd had 20 consecutive months of net drops in freight brokerages and their active authorities. The last positive month was 9, had net new 9. Until this last month, until September, just published that out yesterday, and we had a net increase of 29 MC numbers. So a lot of churn coming after the big bull market. You can see that huge spike back in the pandemic era, and this market is shaking everything else out, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is, we were talking right before the podcast about, you see a slight uptick, right? Which is just a really good sign, even though I think we're all hoping we get back to that normal pre-COVID number. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of the stable number for brokers and the amount of freight that's moving, because you see that spike, and then, nothing against anybody who's got the hustle to go out there and give it a shot. But a lot of brokers entered the market that maybe, were just taking advantage of the bull market, but didn't necessarily have things dialed in. And so hopefully we continue to see like the brokers, that the steady broker market for the ones that really do a good job and keep freight moving and really keep the backbone of our economy moving.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, because it's funny how things go. I just had this conversation yesterday with a carrier, and I said that a lot of the volumes that you saw in that pandemic were never going to be sustainable volumes. So that was a once in a lifetime, potentially, event that we had. And so that consumer driven consumption was never going to be a long-term trend. So naturally, all of the volumes we had split across all these providers, a lot of it had to give, and it did. And so that's kind of where we found ourselves. Is it depends on what freight were you running when you came in. Were you only running the new surplus stuff, and when it went away, you didn't have those relationships? Or what was your diversification? And we just saw that hit a lot of brokerages and a lot of carriers really hard during those years.
Hopefully it was a once in a lifetime event. Hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so. I don't want to live through another pandemic, so.
No, I know, right?
I want to be able to tell my kids.
Another surge in demand.
Yeah. When I'm old, I want to be like, one time we had a pandemic. It's never happened since. That'd be great.
Hopefully, never. I don't mind seeing a bull market, but not a lockdown and and crazy inflation and all these things. But yeah,
I know. May you live in interesting times, and we certainly do. And you can see that in the it paints a different picture on this side of the graph, right? This is concentrations of gross revenues within those 25,000 entities, and you can see it's concentrated toward the top. Those top 1,000, 1,500 brokerages doing, say, $10 million or more, that they have a big piece of the pie, 80 to 90% on most years. You saw in 2022, the height of the market, about $160 billion in gross revenues. That's dropped down to about 135,000 in 2023. And it's about comparable to that in 2024 as well, right? Didn't really saw probably a pretty stable market. But those are the certainly the brokerages on here that top 1,000 or 1,500. They've mastered the finding shippers that stay and pay.
Yep. I think the some of the brokerages that you see enter the market too, when it starts to get good, it's a great leading indicator. There are some of the net new. I mean, we brought on some of the net new, but they're maybe somebody coming from another brokerage, like starting their own thing. You see a bunch of that, which is a good sign. People are taking on those risks. I love the entrepreneurial spirit. But then you do also see when volumes start to go up, trucking companies that are doing a little more sub-haul than their insurance companies would prefer, then they start to open a brokerage authority, and who knows if they're really trying to become like a larger or like grow their brokerage division. They're more so just trying to make sure that they're operating legally. If they're getting more freight than their own assets can handle, then they'll go start a small brokerage to broker out some freight. But both of those things are great leading indicators. It means things are moving a little bit more, hopefully, and so hopefully that trend continues.
I really think that we're stepping into a period of growth for brokers. We've been in it for a while. I think it started during the pandemic, but you can see it here. Like even in 2023, which is that latest data there you have on the screen, that was a weak freight market. And look at the market share retention when you go back and compare that to 2018 and 2019, which was pre-pandemic. So I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. One, they didn't want to just go cutthroat on everyone they had onboarded during the pandemic. But I think that there's other just evolving trends in our space, technology, fraud, theft, insurance, risk and liability. These are all things that brokers help to insulate shippers from. And I think shippers are starting to figure that out. And so I think we're starting to see like this permanent trend towards increased market share for the brokers. And so if that's going to be true for the state of our space, now it really becomes like, who are going to be these brokerages that really like break out and grow in this opportunity and establish themselves in a time where shipper mindsets are shifting.
Yep.
And you bring up a really good point, a few good points, right? That market share, and I don't have that graph in here, but market share pre-pandemic was, 17% of all loads moved. That moved up to 25%. It's dropped a little bit, maybe 23%, 22%. But it's got that same trajectory, right? Yeah. And some of that is that freight brokerages just don't find trucks anymore, right? They become technology plays in a while, connecting the shipper to the carrier, visibility, right? All through fraud prevention. You have a number of different tools that freight brokers have become a more integrated partner with their customers than just someone out hustling trucks.
Yeah.
Let's go to my final slide here, and this is just from the shipper point of view. At Carrier Source, we track the shipper activity on the website. Shippers searching for capacity and carriers kind of doing their due diligence, and it tracks the market very well. You see the two big dips there this year. It starts off in February, ends in mid-August. But you see the couple dips there, they coincide with the tariff deadlines, right? April 1st and August 1st, you see big dip of activity. This is a couple weeks behind. The last couple weeks have not been great weeks for search activity as well. And it's kind of the sentiment of the shipper out there. So it just kind of paints a picture of that we're still in a tough market, and we might be in a tough market for a while.
Yeah, and I think that's what hopefully the three of us, accomplish on this webinar is, if Sam said it on the last slide, like you're seeing the revenue grow. I think that means shippers do really see the value in a good broker, right? They know like you're not just delivering a price, you're protecting them, you're ridiculously reducing the headache. And I think that's an important foundation to know as a broker. Like you don't necessarily have to deal with bad business. I think you don't have to hold on to the folks that just want to shop you no matter what. I think it's good to let them know what you're doing for them. You're not just providing a rate and finding a truck. You're also making sure that freight doesn't get stolen, things don't get delayed. If it does get delayed, we're on top of it. We're letting you know what's going on, right? So they're your proactive service provider. It's not just a dollar amount in a truck for you. It's a full service, headache reducing, stress reducing, way to keep everything moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, I'm a salesperson through and through. So I love this slide because I just have to say this is something I preach to like all of my clients, is that as much as I wish shippers were Google searching brokers near me, brokers who can do this, like that is very rarely the reality. And so I love SEO. I pay attention to things. I'm about the blogs or trying to do our keywords and trying to have a good marketing outreach. But I always use topics like this as a reminder to just tell companies that you have to be getting yourself out there. And what you have to be aggressive right now in finding and building those relationships and presenting your brand and socializing, finding the right networking groups. It's just brokerage right now with, what did you say, like 29,000, 25,000 providers in the space right now isn't a market where, you have shippers calling up your phone and asking you to partner with them right now. Yeah. And the reality is that they're good. They're doing great. Shippers are doing pretty good right now. I bet a lot of these searches are going to be related to the tariff uncertainty, and uncertainty always causes, need to be proactive and have preventative plans in place for if something happens. So you're going to see that increased search activity around that. We saw a lot of shippers go out and look into securing bonded warehousing. Yep. And then like 80% didn't utilize it, right? So you have to go do your homework. You have to go engage. But I would just say that, it's great to be in that space to try to be someone they're finding through these sources if they have something specific they're looking for. But 90 to 98% of the time, they're not looking, and you have to be the one getting yourself in front of them. So I love the topic of today's panel to kind of talk about that. Like, how are we attracting and finding and retaining, these partners?
And that brings up the setting the stage for all this, right? And we talked about the freight brokerage industry, how many MC numbers are out there, how many active freight brokerages, and it raises this question all the time. What separates the survivors in this market from the thrivers? Who's, paint a picture of a survivor and then a thriver, and then let's see where we stand.
Yep. And there are definitely brokerages that have thrived through the last 22 months, even though the market's been tough. There are some brokers that have more than doubled in size. They took advantage of, their plan of action to go after the market worked out really, really well, and took advantage of the folks that, lost business, and some even went out of business, obviously. Right. So hopefully, Sam mentioned SEO and Google and things. And like one of the biggest terms we see brokers searching for is like, how do brokers find shipper customers? Right. And it's very hard to find it on those channels, like she mentioned. So I'm hoping anybody attending this will get something out of the way we talk about how to go after the right type of customers.
Yeah. I would say on the surviving and thriving, so a couple things immediately come to mind. I've interacted with so many brokers over the last several years that we've been in this down market, and I consistently hear two things. And one of the things I hear is, well, we're just trying to maintain right now. Like we know it's a tough market, and so we just want to retain. We don't want to lose, but growth just isn't really realistic. And I hear that mostly from senior leaders. And so that's number one. If I'm hearing that type of like attitude from senior leadership, we've just set the stage for underperformance. And so don't expect high performance and high growth, because we've already packed it in. We've blamed the market. We've found an out. And so that's a survivor. That's not a thriver. And then I have seen companies start since the down market. And some of them are over $25 million right now, like these brokerages. And I have so much fun. I love to watch. Like I'm watching them because they come in with energy. They come in with enthusiasm. Usually they have leaders who are experienced and willing to put themselves out there. And they inspire their teams. They inspire their salespeople. And so I'm seeing these brokerages, in the same year, someone else said, we're just trying to survive. Someone else grew $25 million of business that wasn't there a year. They didn't have it a year ago. So it came from someone else. So that's really exciting for me to watch. So there's a distinct difference right now between these two survivors and thrivers. And I think the thrivers are, one, what is the mindset from leadership down? Like that's a big part of it. And then we could break this down forever, but the high level of it would be, is your sales team aggressive? Are they equipped with what they need? So if your sales team is going out there to be aggressive, operations, account management, customer service has to back up the talk they're talking. And so really we're talking about like, how is your business operation running? And are your sellers confident and prepared to charge into a down market and say, we can grow through this?
And I think that all goes back to what you mentioned at the beginning is the mindset.
Yep.
Senior executives, leadership, what's their mindset? Are they just trying to retain the business they have and not worrying too much about growth because it's just too hard? Or are they out there in growth mode? And that kind of filters through all of the, are your salespeople aggressive?
Yeah.
If you're aggressive, your salespeople will be aggressive. If you're not, if you're just hanging on, probably that you're going to see that on the sales floor as well.
Yeah, it's a major
confidence is the number one tool that a salesperson needs. Confidence.
For sure.
And if they don't see confidence in their leadership team, where are they supposed to get that?
Yeah, to that point, it has a major impact. The culture, it has a major impact on the culture. If you've already kind of given up on like, where can we pivot, and you're not thinking outside the box, because what we see from on our side, the brokerages that grow, they have a full plan. Everybody within the company understands the vision and the plan. And so it gives the salespeople something to buy into. And it gives, especially if you know what type of business the broker, your brokerage is going after, and you're aware of that, then you have sales reps going after that on the customer side, but you also have your carrier reps really trying to build the network in those specific areas on the other side of it. And that's one of the trends we've seen from companies that have grown through this whole last 2 years, is they are putting a really big emphasis on making sure those carrier relationships are strong. They're not trying to squeeze the margin that's getting lost. They're not trying to squeeze that out of the trucking company. They're trying to take care of those folks, because you can't really do volume if you don't have the trucking network. And so if everybody's always making sure that we're going after this specific type of business in this region, then your carrier rep team is on the same page, and they know, all right, let's go start, picking up the phone and making sure we have solid relate. If we win that freight, we got to be ready to go, right? If we win it on the shipper side, we got to be ready to go and have a truck to send that out to.
Do you guys find that a lot of, defining growth, what does growth mean? I think you just described it there, Sean. What does it mean? Here's your tactics. This is what you need to do for the growth. Do you find that freight brokerages have a good grasp of how to define, when they use the word growth, how do they really define that?
No, they don't have a good grasp. But that's not, I'm not blaming. I would say
you can find that in any industry, I think.
Any industry,
Yeah.
When you sit down, I'm a consultant now. So my first usually couple months is working with executives. And when I ask them a question, like, tell me who you are as a business. And they're like, oh, well, I've never thought of that or tried. And it's like, it's difficult sometimes. You get so caught up in your business that you're not thinking of it from like an outsider's perspective, which is really important when you want to consider growth. So to me, if you say we want to grow and you want to grow, you need to kind of step back and say, okay, who are we? Like, what is our identity? What do we do well? What are we currently doing? Like, if we're saying we want to grow, define that. Tell me what that looks like. Are you $10 million and you want to be 20? Are you 25, but you have aspirations to be 100 million plus? Like, you first need to put some numbers on that, and then kind of put a time range on that, because how aggressive your goal is really going to affect what you're going to have to be willing to do, and the resources you're going to need to put into that. So I just think like putting things down on paper, talking it through with your team, and actually saying, what is growth? Define growth. Don't just say we want to grow. Okay, well, what does that mean? Is it year over year growth of 2%? Mm-hmm. Is it year over year growth of 20%? And then you start breaking down that goal of like, what is it going to take, do we think, to accomplish this type of growth? Who are we going to have to hire? What are we going to have to do with operations? Are we going to need more support, more resources? How are we going to bring this business in? And then the second piece of that to me is what I call, like in consulting, I say I focus on sustainable revenue. So it's really hard to plan to grow around things that are not sustainable or permanent. So saying we want to grow, but we're 99% exposed to spot markets. That's really difficult because you have minimal control over your spot market interactions. But if you're like, we want to grow, and so we're going to make a goal to go from 99% to 75% spot, 25% contractual business, like putting numbers out there and giving yourself goals that are going to help you accomplish it. The other big part of sustainable is like, be honest with yourself about what you do and what you do well. So if you're in like produce transportation and you're like, we're going to go get into aerospace, it's like, okay, well, do you even have the network to support that? Like, do your carriers, are they prepared to support that? Or are you like starting from scratch, know nothing, have to go learn a new space? You're making it difficult to grow. I'm not saying you can't, by all means. If you have the confidence and think there's a good reason, go for it. But it could look like, hey, we're in produce, so we're also interested in expanding into wine because that's refrigerated, multi-stop, heavily appointment consolidated based on the West Coast. I think it would fit what we do. Let's start working on that. So making sure your operations were built to sustain the type of revenue you're bringing in is important, or you're going to bring in revenue just for the sake of top line revenue, and it's going to probably attrit pretty quickly through your business. And then you didn't actually grow long term. You grew for a few months, maybe a year, and then lost that business again.
Yeah. I love that explanation, Samantha, because it's like you mentioned at first on the first response, like the defeatist attitude of we're just trying to maintain, we just want to retain. But then the other side of the equation is like, yeah, we just want to grow, and you don't have a plan. And then you just basically put all this pressure on your staff, like grow. And you end up like the sales teams and your whole team can end up in this like frantic, almost like toxic productivity, like just doing a bunch of stuff, just trying to grow, but no sustainable plan. So to be able to, you said it perfectly, like it's really just having a solid go-to-market strategy and everybody being on the same page. Like, yeah, we want to grow X amount year over year. Okay, what verticals do we want to grow in? Like, what are we going to focus on? And if we, like you said, if we know who we are, we know what we do well, we should have that listed very clearly on our website or anything, any kind of sales collateral that we put out there. We should make sure that that's very clearly stated. We don't have to cast this crazy wide net where it's just like, hey, we move freight. Yeah, so do a bunch of people. But if you have a sort of a niche carved out, doesn't mean you're going to be married to that niche forever. But usually your growth requires you to focus on like, well, where is this growth going to come from? What vertical? And how do we make sure that we try to penetrate that? And then how long are we going to push on that vertical before we decide if like, have we seen enough growth from there, or did we find out that this market was too small to sustain the type of growth that we're going for? And do we need to pivot? And then if that's the case across the board, like I said, the carrier rep side and the customer facing side, like you should have sales collateral for both, like trying to attract the right type of customer, the right type of carriers. Every piece of, if I'm looking at your company, like if you do leave me a message, like I'm your team's cold calling and you leave me a message because I screen all my calls, right? Like if they say the right thing and at that moment I'm considering shopping for all the flatbed that I do, I want it to go. I need a new provider for that. If they hear that buzzword and then they go to your website and it says that, it goes, we are the best flatbed company in the Southwest or something like that, right? All of a sudden it's aligning. So customers don't always know that it's all registering. They're not, but they hear one message, then they see another consistent message, and then they see it again. And maybe it takes 3 to 7 touch points before they go, we should give this company a call. They're obviously, really believe in their flatbed strategy or their flatbed service.
Yeah. I would also, the last thing I want to add on this topic, because I don't want us to sugarcoat it, is that like defining growth can be difficult because it can also look like asking yourself, do we have the right team members in the right roles to scale our team? Do we have the right technology to accomplish our goals? Are we structured? Are we operationally structured to do what we say we want to do? I've seen that with my clients. Like we're trying to get from 25 to 50 million, and they decided that the kind of freight broker cradle to grave model broke for them at that point. And then you have to figure out how to restructure a $25 million business into a split team model to get to 50, right? And that might be necessary based on your industries you service. And oh my gosh, it's work. It's a lot of work, and it could be a little bit painful, and you can have some feelings get hurt, and it becomes a lot about culture and aligning your teams with your goals. And so like, I'm just saying growth is, I don't think anybody who grew would look back and be like, oh, it was so easy. But like they would all look back and say like, it was hard, but it was worth it because look where we're at. So just being prepared to really make, it's like growth has to be a company-wide effort. You're going to inevitably involve operations. It's not just a sales effort at all by any means. So it's going to become company-wide. It's going to make sure your people are aligned, and it's going to look like senior leadership probably having to be brutally honest with themselves about the resources they have and what they're prepared to do.
And one of those key ingredients that I think you both touched upon, but we didn't explicitly say it, right? Because it all kind of falls from, on the growth side, knowing your ICP, defining your ICP. And for freight brokerages, that means idea customer profile plus idea carrier profile too, I think, because as Sean, Samantha mentioned as well, is that chicken and egg, right? Of being a brokerage, right? You can get the freight, but you have to have the carriers to service it. Do you get the carriers first or the shipper first? And that's a question that is well beyond my pay grade. It's like an existential question that we don't need to answer that. But the importance of defining your ICP for growth, I think is 100% needed. You can't have good growth without knowing your ICP.
I think you just teed up a question I saw come in. It says, in your experience, what signals should brokers look for early on to identify shippers who are likely to become strong long-term partners? In my opinion, finding strong long-term partnership potential is defining your ICP and looking for people in that space. So your ICP, your ideal client or customer profile, whatever you prefer to call that, would be, who are the people in industries and verticals that I have a high confidence level that we will provide competitive premium services to? That's how I would say that needs to be phrased. Not just, can we do it? Could we get the job done if we had to? This is too competitive of a market to be like, we could probably figure out how to get the job done, right? Like you need to be like, yeah, I'm going to knock your socks off with my service if I get into that space. And so to me, that looks like sitting down and defining, who do we currently serve that we're doing really well at? That's the easiest place to start. Be honest about your portfolio. Who are you hitting great KPIs with? Who do you have great carriers built around? Like, where are your account management teams crushing it? And look at those businesses. And something I like to tell people is, like, in a lot of tools, people end up paying for tools like ZoomInfo or something similar. You can look up those customers and it'll show you like their top 6 to 10 competitors. So that tells me like who's directly in their industry. And then you can look at like the NAICS codes for those companies. And that is like call it legal definition of the industry they're classifying themselves as. Is it food and bev? Is it machinery? Is it pharmaceuticals, medical, health sciences? Like, what is that? Well, now you have a whole industry definition in AICS code you can go out and search in your tools for and try to pull every company that's classified under these same types of business codes as the ones that I'm currently working with. That's one example. It's not exactly how you have to do it. But the point is, you can look within and find companies, and then you find their competitors, and then inevitably one of their competitors is slightly different, slightly categorized as something else. And then maybe you go explore what that is. Well, what else is it that they do that we might be able to get into? And so you can kind of start in an industry and work your way like a spider web into these interconnected industries that a lot of them would be very similar to what you're familiar with. And I just think you should start there. And if you have great traction and great success within one of those, then you double down on that. And then eventually, after you've mastered that, you can look into, well, what's ancillary to this? Like, what's closely related to this type of space? The other place it can come from is your carriers. So like if you're talking to carriers and you're using the same, team driver carrier fleet on electronics, and they're like, hey, we also have some of our units that are reefer because we do team driver pharmaceuticals. We can give you X amount of trucks per week. Well, I have a pretty high confidence now that I can go in and try to find a refrigerated pharmaceutical shipper because I have these experienced providers who are willing to partner with me, who have proven they're good to work with, and I can go back that into the industry. So that's my two sources: looking at your existing customers on the shipper side, and then talking and having good conversations with your existing carrier partners.
I think that's perfect, because if you're talking to those carriers, you might find a spot where you have capacity that nobody else has that kind of capacity. Like you like working with that carrier, and now you can, at least you have a target to aim at. If we could get more freight in this space, we have the carrier partnership, we have the network. But I also tell my team too, when you're thinking about your ICP, it needs to be very specific, but I like to think about what type of business would we almost be very happy to run. Like, because when you're running the right business and it fits your business really well, the processes you already have set up, all of a sudden work becomes very fun. I know that's not everybody's story, but like business is fun. If your business is growing, usually everybody in the organization is pretty happy about it. And so I always try to look to my own staff to say like, hey, what is the type of business that if I got you more of it, you would be like so happy. Like for sure you have the right carrier network. You know exactly who to go to. You know exactly what the pricing for that market is in that region, and you know that you have carriers that are going to let you track them. You're going to be able to give solid updates, and you're able to speak intelligently to the shipper on their own business, right? Because you have experience in it. So you provide a higher level of service than if it was just some general piece of freight that you're like hoping to get covered, right? Like you're posting and praying on it. You don't want to have to do that. So like I would go so specific as to say like, we do really, really well when we're targeting grocery retail in the Southwest, right? And if we could get more of that, like our whole team is telling us like, I'm very knowledgeable in that space. I know exactly what they're going to need. I can anticipate what the seasonality of it might be, everything, right? So if you start throwing out some ideas, and when you're trying to think of growth strategies and your team's like, oh, that would be awesome, that's probably a good indicator that you should keep heading in that direction. And it doesn't cost much to run a test. Like if everybody's on the same page and you tell your sales team like, hey, we created a little brochure on this, we have a landing page on our website specific to this, I want you to just get out there and pound the phones for these specific types of clients. You're probably going to find out really quickly if there's an interest there, if there's an opportunity there. And then you already know that like your operations team is already ready for it. They already told you like, dude, I'd be so excited if you could get me more of these types of customers. Like we crush it in those. So the second you hand that first new customer across the board, they're stoked, right? Like there's enthusiasm there. And now you have this like infectious growth mindset in your culture. And it's like culture is having the right culture for it is absolutely the best way to grow.
And what would happen if you took your operations team least favorite account and went and found another one and we're like, hey guys, we got their twin, right? But I mean that, like I tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't care if you think like, well, it makes money. Does it really? Like, are your operations teams, do they love it? Do they have a great time? Do you have premium coverage on this type of freight? Like, are you guys just like, it's easy to operate in your network? Because I come from brokerage. I didn't give my background, but I can personally attest that when I was a vice president of revenue, we had a couple of accounts on our team. And I was like, if they fire me today, I'm not even going to like try to get it back.
Yeah.
Like, let it go, because it was just not worth it. I actually ended up firing a customer once because I was like, the strain you put on my operations makes the margins not worth it to us.
Yeah.
And so you also have to be willing to identify that not all revenue is good revenue for your business. And so as much as we define the good, be willing to also define the bad and avoid that.
And be true to it, right? Yeah. Like because part of the ICP is also not only they do this type of freight, but it's like they understand the value of my brokerage.
They treat my teammates well.
They're protecting them from fraud. I'm protecting them from delays. I'm helping them. I'm proactive. I would say if the shipper doesn't have that mindset and they're like, look, if you give me the best price, I'll give you the business. Like run away from those shippers. You're just going to lose it on price anyway. And they're going to be the most demanding. They're not really going to treat your team well. Yeah. And nothing motivates a team better than when they feel like the frontline people really have their back. Like they're trying their best to bring in the right type of business. Because otherwise it's a hard job running just the customer facing side and updating customers on shipments. Like if there's a problem, you take a beating, and it's nice to be able to know that you can get a win on the other side of it, because, the person understands what you do. So when you tell them like, hey, listen, I know the freight's delayed. I apologize. I'm on top of it. I'm going to give you an update every 30 minutes until we get this thing back on track. And they actually go, thank you. Like they understand that the freight is messy. It's difficult. The truck could have broken down. The truck could have gotten in an accident, but they understand that when they call you, you're already on it, right? Like, so they know it happens, but they know you got their back. I want that type of customer if I'm a broker.
And to put a bow tie on all this, so the reason why you define your ICP, you go after to echo everything that you guys have been saying, is that you want to do the same freight you're good at because you've already learned the hard lessons to get to the point where you become an expert or have an expertise about that certain type of freight, and you're up above on the learning curve, right? And once you get up there, you're more of a consultant than trying to learn some other industry or some other pieces of freight from the ground up, where you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Things are going to go haywire. You're going to run into the bad shippers out there, because there are bad shippers out there, because the people who pay you the least are the most neediest. They're the neediest people out there, and it crushes whatever little margin you're going to make anyway. So it's
kind of amazing how many people that are willing to pay are also the ones that are really nice and understand what you go through in your business, and they're the best partner. And it really is true. Like every time somebody is just grinding you on price, you're going to take that business on and you're going to regret it immediately. You're going to be like, man, they're making me do more work than my customers who pay me top dollar because they know what I provide.
Yeah, well, that comes down to also being really confident in your value. So what when I'm working with a client, we define ICP, and the next thing we do is we define our value propositions and who we are. So it's like, to my ICP, what is the value I provide you? And if somehow you can't articulate any value, stop there, go back and redefine your ICP. But if you can articulate that value proposition, like, well, we do this really well, like better than I'm willing to put myself up against our competition, then you have a worth in that space, right? And you know what that would look like, what you're willing to do for price, what you're willing to accept operationally. You probably have good carrier partners and they have a worth. And so you're also kind of the moderator of like, what am I willing to give them or let them have, right? And so after you articulate that value proposition, that helps you start having those better conversations right out of the gate with the shippers. So when we go out, because not all shippers will come to us, and we go and we start soliciting, and we're trying to run our outbound sales and marketing campaigns, and we're having conversations, the shippers who understand value, when they hear it properly and well articulated, will recognize it. And you will get something. Like it could be, I tell people all the time, industry response rates right now, like email, 3 to 5%, phone, less than 5%. I'm not like a success could look like a 2%. But if 2% of shippers are saying, hey, yeah, what you said there, I don't need that now. But if they know that they might need it in the future and they hear it, they hear the value, there'll be something there for you. They'll raise some type of hand, give some type of signal. At the very least, put your information in a priority folder in their inbox where they know to come back to you. So articulating the value becomes the next step, because when you do it properly, the right type of partners you want are the ones who understand the value. And so when they see it, they know. But if you don't articulate the value, then that's when you end up getting like these really transactional people are the ones that respond to you because they don't care, don't know value when they see it. And the transactional people might hear value and think expensive and just move on, right? So if you sound cheap when you reach out and they're transactional, there's a good chance you're going to get cheap. So I just think that in all my years working with shippers, the ones that were my best customers were smart, relationship driven, always open-minded. And when they heard something that they knew I'd be silly to not make a mental note, to not make a connection, they always did it. And so it might have taken still another 6 to 12 to 18 months for them to start transacting with me. But there was some type of way to connect with them right there because of a proper value articulation.
Yeah. And to your point, it's always a numbers game. So if cold calls and emails, just because there's so much AI now, right? So it's really like, I get a lot of them, and I'm sure everybody does, right? Like, it's tough to know, like, you don't really want to answer your phone or look at every single email anymore, right? So if you're only going to reach 2% of your potential audience, if you have that value proposition, Samantha, that you're talking about, if it's dialed in and it's messaged correctly, then like, that's, if I'm only going to get in front of 2%, let's make sure that 2% sees exactly what I'm good at, right? Because if I can get them to view it and they do click and they do come in and they want to talk to me, at least the people I'm talking to, my sales team is going to be pretty encouraged by my marketing strategy or my go-to-market strategy, because they see it working, right? Like, so even though they didn't get as many leads as they wanted, at least the ones that they could actually take on and win are the ones that came to them, right? And that's very encouraging as for a growth strategy on your sales team.
And we've come a long way with sales technology. So on that note too, like, we hear a lot now in the industry about intent data. And I like that. I'm a fan of intent data. However, again, I think for like the smaller mid-sized brokers, it's hard to pin down intent data for your services from shippers on the internet with intent tools. But you can create your own intent very easily, because most sales tools have tracking, and I can see opens, clicks, and like views through platforms, to name a few: HubSpot, Front, MailChimp, like just different things that you could do for your Apollo. I think Zoom in. No, you can't send emails through them anymore. Apollo. Anyway, like, if you're using these tools, I can go back and I can look at like all the emails I sent for sales, and I can see the ones that were opened more than 2 or 3 times. That were clicked, meaning because I always, please, if you're in sales, have your LinkedIn profile and your company website and your signature line, please, so people can go do their research without having to go look for you. But you can also use that to measure clicks, right? Or you could even create a custom landing page through HubSpot or your website with a very specific link that we know came from my sales emails. And then, there's just things you can do to try to track. They didn't respond, but they opened it 4 times. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't a 1-second delete button. So they saw something there that made them come back to it, and then leave it in the inbox, and then maybe come back to it one more time and probably decide, where am I going to folder this for future? You're now warm. You are warm in their inbox. You are warm in their mind. Now you can decide what to do with that. Do we follow that up with a phone call? Do I follow that up with a LinkedIn message? Do I send another email with a video to really like put my face right in front of them too, and keep it warm? So I'm just saying, like, when you put the value out there, number one, you were right about the 2%, like really low percentages here. Make sure your ICP is 100% of who you're sending to. So the 2% we get are actually a 2% that fits our ICP. So we have ICP, then we have value articulated correctly in our outreach. Then we have to like have a way to track and measure our efforts to know where to spend our time on the very minimal percentages that we're getting those intent or response signals from.
Yeah, I think we have a question related. Or Kevin, do you want to say something before I start going on?
Yeah, just one little quick item, and I saw the question. I was going to read the question as well. Is part of that focus and messaging be as narrow as possible and as deep, right? Like an inch wide in your messaging and a mile deep, right? Really target down your ICP. Make it easy for the people that you're reaching out to understand your value prop. You don't need to advertise everything you do or make the sell in those communications, right? You just want to take the next step and really demonstrate solutions. So with that, we have a great question here. It kind of ties into our next section of content here. If you could suggest one actionable step brokers can take tomorrow to strengthen relationships with existing shippers, what would it be?
Ooh, just one?
Yeah.
Well, you can I think do 2 or 3. I mean,
yeah, I think this might be, I guess, stating the obvious, but with our technology, we're always trying to make sure that we're freeing up the human to do a little bit more, a lot more, hopefully, soft touch, right? We want to, like, I would look at what your team's doing and try to figure out what's menial that you could maybe take off their plate so they can actually pick up the phone and have a little bit more of a personal touch try to find the wins. And even like if you're, I would say if you're a good salesperson, you're okay with like digging in and finding out what you're not doing well. And a lot of times people, when you give people the permission and you set the stage for a comfortable environment for them to tell you honestly what they would like you to do better, I've always experienced that as something that enhances the relationship. So if I actually pick up the phone and I start talking to them about like, hey, I just want to check in about how we're doing. Any feedback for us, for our team, anything we can be doing better for you. And once they get a chance to tell you all about it, you've got a great opportunity to see if there's any problems you can fix, but you're also now having this nice, open, honest conversation. And you can ask questions like, okay, if we can kind of tie all that up and we get you some results around that, is it okay if I then come ask you for more freight? Like, do you have more freight that you're running with other brokers that we could take a stab at instead of it going to somebody else? Can we try to become your exclusive, like, number one broker? And I think I'm always trying to solve stuff with sales conversations and things, because if your sales team's doing a good job, it goes back to Kevin, something you said, which is, well, I think both of you said this, but you're a consultant, like you're not really just a salesperson. Like, you're trying to get yourself in there and you're the expert. You're the expert on moving freight so that they don't have to worry about it. They want to run their business. They don't want to have to worry about freight headaches. So is there anything left on the table that's still causing them a headache that you could take off their plate?
Yeah. I'm going to answer that one. And then I just saw another one come in from Casey. Really like that. Yeah. So I'll jump on that too real quick. But I would say the number one thing that I always found that was successful was asking about their broader business. So the person you're interacting with has other things on their plate other than just your relationship. And I love to get to know people personally. I always asked about the wife or the kids or school, or I knew which one of my clients had their, daughter in certain language tutoring or ballet or whatever. But I like to know, because it opened up more opportunities for me and it makes you stickier. I like to know, like, what are your plans for the next quarter? What are you guys working on in the next year? What are you being asked to figure out by leadership? What is the team focused on as a goal for short-term, long-term? What other things do you have going on? I love to use the example. Like, I had a Fortune 500 shipper that was my customer. We talked a lot and we talked about business and what else he had going on. And it got to the point where I got to help him negotiate a $45 million managed LTL contract with another provider, because I was able to, like, he trusted me to help with that because it was an area that I had some expertise in. But we weren't willing to do a couple things that they were willing to do. And so we were kind of already out of the race, but I got to see the contract. I saw the terms, I made advisements. And so, like, you just get this privilege of kind of having this really close seat, I guess, at the table with what they have going on. And did I get that contract? No. But then, I got a couple more $1 million in the next truckload bid, and we were working through other things together. So you can get really sticky, and think of yourself as a consultant to these shippers. As you ask about their business, try to learn about their business. That also protects you from turnover at your shippers, because it'll happen. And if you know a lot about that business and that person leaves and their replacement comes in and they're like, holy crap, I don't know what I'm doing, and you know everything about that business, then you become like a resource to them. And you're like, oh, and I've done that before too. I had someone get assigned a new division and I started talking to them, and I knew all the ins and outs about their office managers in every 30 branch locations and how they operate and their systems. And that guy was calling me every week. So, like, you can make yourself really valuable. On that note, Casey's question, that's a lot of work to do what I just described. And so you become really tied into these shippers, right? And if you're smaller and you're trying to scale and you're a leader, we have a lot of brokerages, I've noticed, have a lot of success with their, like, CEO and founder selling. And at some point, that's not scalable, and they have to be able to pass that off. So
I think that's one of the biggest hurdles, right?
Yeah.
Especially getting from small to mid-size, right?
Yeah.
It is delegation. Delegation is like the first big hurdle that you have to pass.
But the thing I would recommend that you do is when you start onboarding. So, like, you could go out, create the relationship. When you start, the second you decide you're going to do business together, you pick that person that needs to be the eventual go-to, and you bring them in and you let them lead onboarding, and you let them lead introductory calls and go through the setup and they just kind of naturally become that primary face and name in the communications. And they earn trust just by going through an onboarding process with that person. And then you let that person own the 7-day checkup, the first 30-day checkup, the first QBR, and you show face as the leader or the salesperson, and you stay involved, but you let that person start to own that. And it's really about confidence. Like, your shippers need confidence that the team knows them, knows their needs, and can execute. It's hard if they see no face but yours, and then 12 months into the relationship, you're like, hey, I need to step out of this more. That's scary. So if you have the opportunity, do it from day one. Bring in someone else from day one. Involve your team in meetings. Even if you lead it, bring a couple other faces on that meeting. Just let them start getting familiar with the rest of your company, so that it doesn't have to be only you.
Yeah, and even if you have to help your team get the win, right? Get that, on the front facing side. But kind of touching on both of those things too, just based on what you were saying, I think the best way to build rapport with your client, know their business really, really well. Mm-hmm. Everybody's trying to do the small talk thing. Put the small talk and the, hey, how's everything going? Whatever, that comes later. Really, really understand their business. That's the best way to make people feel like you really care about what they're doing, is you're trying to anticipate their needs. But I love the point too on, like, if you're trying to scale, you do have to get more and more people involved. And so, like, when folks call me and they have like something support related on the tech side, I'm like, had you already submitted something to our support side? And then if they haven't, then hopefully that prompts them to do. I'm trying to almost educate the client on what is the best way to get your problem resolved, because it's not always through me. Like, if I'm just not available, like I'm out of range with my cell phone or something, I want you to know exactly who within my company to go to. And also it gives me these great training opportunities for my team. You can't build a strong business on your own. You can do a pretty good amount, right? If you're a hustler, right? But if you want to really scale, you have to let your team get out there and go after it. And every time your customer actually comes to them, you can be there and help them through it, but let them get that win with the customer, right?
As a former salesperson, I had some account managers on some of my accounts that I was so confident in their ability to please and exceed expectations that I could confidently onboard and like just monitor, just keep an eye on some things, and then do the fun stuff. Do the like calling to ask about the business and spend 30 minutes talking about their goals every week.
Totally.
But I didn't have to spend my time talking about an issue with a POD or a billing. We're not getting our billing done, or something was like because they knew who to go to for that. And my account manager was so on top of it. I can also say, as a seller, I've had some account managers that were not, and it strains the entire thing. So customer service, account management is like the lifeline of your business. So sales is bringing in your growth, but if it's bringing it into an account management team, that's where attrition happens. So like, you can lose more than you're bringing in, or you can lose as much as you're bringing in if you haven't really invested in what's happening in that customer service account management space. And when you have a hunter or a really good seller, you're lucky, because they're hard to find. But if you have that, and then you don't allow them to do what they do best because they have to babysit their accounts, that's a hindrance to growth. So we're talking about growing. So you're also going to have to be looking at things that block your growth, which that would be like one of the number one things is sellers not selling because they have to account manage.
Yeah. Good.
And and just really quickly, I'll throw out AI because we haven't talked about AI, but just ChatGPT, learning a business, learning industry, being able to engage with your ICP or anyone out there to really strengthen that relationship with the shippers has never been easier, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you can do what it would take me 3 or 4 hours to do in about 3 or 4 minutes, just with a couple of good questions, right? You can peruse through an entire industry and have a lot of talking points set up to go, right? And if you want to drill down into a specific customer that you have, it's very easy to do. No matter what their size, almost it's easy.
Go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, we're talking about scaling. We're talking about growth. Let's talk. Move away a little bit from sales into support systems, technology, kind of what you need to have in place. to be able to grow, because growing, you just don't pull in new sales. You just don't double your business and keep going, right? You have to have a lot of systems and processes in place and technology to service that new business.
Yeah, I always say don't expect your team to follow your process if it doesn't make any sense or it's not easy to follow, right? So like I always, in a low margin industry, when the margins continue to get compressed, especially right now, the answer to that is being able to do volume without increasing headcount, right? Without increasing your operating cost. So that's how you stay profitable, but you can't do volume if you don't have a solid network of carriers. If you're a broker and you're getting opportunities and you're quoting them, but you can't move that freight, it really hinders your ability. So even before you get into the technology, like I'm trying to think about what I want to do with my business. I want to grow a robust network in a particular set of lanes for a particular type of freight so that I can line it up with my go-to-market strategy, my ICP. Once I have that in place, then I can look at technology to say what is the easiest path from A to Z. So if I have an easy way to organize the network, I've said this on a bunch of podcasts, but if you are telling your team, hey, go to these set of carriers because we've already vetted them, we've run them through, say, Highway or something like that, right? And we trust that that's our network. We're trying to give them more business because they really give us good rates. We want to give them more freight. And then you tell them all that, and then your carrier rep team, you go in and be like, hey, why'd you post that freight on the load board? I told you, go to these carriers, but you didn't give them an easy way to do it. Like you didn't even, like they have to go like searching through folders to find that one spreadsheet where that's lined up or whatever. Like if that's your case or it's written on a notepad, just don't expect them to, because when they get into the heat of the moment and they're running through their day and things are busy and they're starting to feel stressed, the entire process breaks down if it's not simple. Right. So all of a sudden, like, don't be surprised when they're like, dude, I got it covered. Like I'm doing the best I can over here. Right. So you really have to, the tech should give your team an easy way to receive the shipments, price them, find a carrier, track the loads, right? Like what brokers need to be able to deliver is it's a lot of the same stuff, but then, being able to do that, those simple things should always be easy. It should feel easy so that you can deliver a higher level of service and a more personal touch to each customer.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if we're talking about technologies, I would throw out several areas. One is, what are you doing with your inbox? I don't know, huge front fan over here or something similar. So like a lot of breakdowns happen just in something as simple as an inbox. I think like over 80% of freight happens in an email. So, I mean, it's like, I made that up, but for real, when do we not email about every single shipment? So that's a critical part. And I have come into companies and seen how communication is happening in 3 different places about emails that are in a separate, and I'm like, what are we doing? So that's one thing. Sales, like if we're actually talking about getting customers and you don't have a tool that can help you go in and set parameters for an ICP and then provide you back every company in your parameter with the contacts and their emails and their phone numbers, you are at a major disadvantage, because I can tell you that costs about like $100 a month to have that. And so people have that. And so you need to have that information available to you. So look into, if you have questions, you can reach out to me, but look into some tools that you can access that would allow you to do that ICP identification. Sorry, I was going to get to that. What 3 to 5 items belong on an ICP checklist? That can be as simple as like company size. Are you trying to service the 1 billion plus, or do you want to stay 100 million or less? Geography. Do you go into Canada and Mexico? Otherwise, don't put a North America filter, just put a United States filter. You can even filter by state into a lot of these tools that I'm talking about. So what geographies are you best at? Focus on those areas where they have a physical distribution and manufacturing presence. Those are a couple. ICPs, you could also do the industry. You can apply the industry NAICS codes or verticals, like I said, by commodity. What are their keywords and their commodities that they're doing? Those are kind of my primaries. So that would be my primary checklist. And then if we get into the actual business, I would like to summarize this by saying, if you're not exploring some type of operational automation, like already, I'm a little worried for you. We're a little behind. We need to start like looking into some areas we can automate that are like the low hanging fruit, right, of the industry. So how can we avoid anything that's a copy and paste task right now that's making someone do? How can we avoid the manual, I didn't get a POD, like upload on this? How can we avoid going out to carrier websites to put in pro numbers or getting tracking information back in? Are we connected via a tool that gets us better than 75% visibility across all of our truckload partners so that we're not using 25% of our time to do that? There's appointment scheduling automation now. Like, are you setting hundreds of pickup and delivery appointments? Have you automated that yet? So there are so many areas that we can take from being a time-intensive task to seconds. And I think it's worth exploring at this point to see what's right for you.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, I think that the kind of bringing us to the end of the hour. I'd like to number one, thank you both for joining us today, and I want to get your final thoughts, kind of what you'd like to leave our audience with today. I'll start with Sean.
Yeah.
And yeah.
In this type of thought process, like if you're just trying to start from square one, you don't necessarily have a budget to put into this. Samantha mentioned a bunch of tools like that are good for your emailing and tracking stats and what got an open rate and things like that. But I would really just start with identify what you want to be known for, create a nice little handout for it, make a landing page exactly for that, build some emails that are like the same messaging, right? Like, so that you make sure that if you do get in front of the customer, it's the exact right messaging. If they are willing to click on a link and land on a landing page, it's telling them exactly about everything that you do and what you want to be known for. And I think those are some easy ways to test out, like, do any of these strategies work for me? And if they don't, like, how do I pivot into a different vertical?
Yeah. I would say final thoughts are that the freight market's not, the hottest it's been, but a truth that I believe is out there is that brokerage market share is going to grow. So there is opportunity for brokers, even with the volumes that we already have out there, to continue to grow. So I think that if I was a broker, I would be optimistic about my future if I'm committed to growing. And then, like Sean said, create and articulate a strong growth plan the resources to back that up and commit to it. Have a vision for your company and where you want to get to, and then create a culture that supports that goal and gets everyone brought in around that and excited. The salesperson in me is going to say, make sure you have people who are willing to be aggressive and get your company out there with confidence. That's necessary for new business growth. We have to go get them and bring them in. So let's make sure we're doing that. And we have a strategy specifically too for our revenue attraction. And then after that, it just becomes about focusing on running a really solid business that, when we get people in, they're going to stay because my teams are operating well. My culture's great. They're happy. They're excited to give good service. We've automated the tedious stuff that makes people hate their jobs, if it's possible, things like that. We have not paid to say this, by the way, but we have a great TMS that our people love to work in. As a former Tai customer, like, that mattered. The amount of clicks we put on our people every day mattered. So, like, what are you, just think through all the little things that you're asking people to do and make sure your culture's rock solid and your sellers are super confident when they go out there to sell.
And I would add to that, define growth, define your growth, define your ICP, drill it down. And whether it's a good market, bad market share is going up. Long-term market share is going up. So you're in a good position. But whether it's a bad market, good market, or sideways market, don't be scared to say no to business that falls outside of that focus and that growth. Because not all growth is good. Not all growth plans are good, right? You have to be very focused and do it the right way. And at that point, you'll see the success. You might have to wait a little bit longer, but to see the business, but not the success. So it's good to see. I enjoyed our conversation today, guys. Always fun talking to you both, and to our audience. Thanks so much for joining us here on attracting shippers that pay and stay, which are both keys to that, and Tai Software for having us, Sean. And with that, go check out Tai Software, go check out Samantha Jones Consulting, and check out Brushpass Research. I got a lot of free research out
cool
there.
guy over there, so
Yeah. And with that said, I think that's going to wrap it up.
All right. Thank you both so
Thanks, guys.
much.